Hi, this is Marc Lesser, and I'm happy to be here today for Mindful Magazine's Mindful 30. I've been asked to introduce myself briefly, and I was thinking that all of my my Zen friends think that I'm a business guy, and all of my business colleagues and friends think that I'm a Zen guy, and actually much of my life has been kind of integrating these what I think of as mindfulness practices with business and leadership practices. And maybe another place to start, just to mention that I took a 1 year leave of absence from Rutgers University when I was an undergraduate student, and that 1 year leave of absence turned into 10 years living at the San Francisco Zen Center. And of course, following that, I got an MBA degree and entered the business world. And I feel incredibly fortunate to be bringing mindfulness, meditation, and emotional intelligence into companies like Google, um, and other corporations and organizations around the world. So mindful leadership. And recently, I wrote a book called 7 Practices of a Mindful Leader. And I thought it might be useful just to mention these practices. These practices are: love the work, do the work, don't be an expert, connect to your pain, connect to the pain of others, depend on others, and keep making it simpler. And there's something very, I think, beautiful and poetic about these practices, and in some way they're aspirational. And there's also something very grounded and practical about these practices. Like the first practice is love the work. And this means not so much to necessarily to love the particular job or particular career that you find yourself in, although that would be pretty good too. But it's to love the work of mindfulness, to love the work of developing your self-awareness. And these days, with the what these are very strange and challenging times that we find ourselves living in, from the pandemic to politics to potent racial diversity issues, climate change. And the topic that comes up for me just to say a few words about is the topic of courage. And I think mindfulness practice and mindful leadership and finding our own sense of kind of groundedness and peace in this situation that we're finding ourselves in takes a good deal of courage. And one of the people that I'm fond of is a Zen teacher from the 9th century China named Dongshan. And he had something I thought pretty useful and interesting to say about courage. He says, without saying it is or it isn't, do you have the courage to be at peace with it? Everyone wants to leave the endless changes. But when you stop bending and fitting your life, you come and sit by the fire. Without saying it is or it isn't. So without being caught by our usual divisive, limited thinking, without being caught by things. How could we not be caught by the pandemic, caught by thinking too narrowly or too one-sided about politics, about the how could we not be caught by our own limited views, our sometimes closed hearts about gender, about race, about any form of one-sided thinking? How can we open our hearts to what is and to what's possible? And this takes courage, right? Without saying it is or it isn't. Do you have the courage to be at peace with it. Everyone wants to leave the endless changes. And I think uh, so much of mindfulness practice and mindful leadership is how we can relate, how we can live in change, how we can find our own sense of courage and peace and possibility within impermanence. I was on uh, a webinar last night with some friends and heard a quote that I hadn't heard before, and someone said, um, in relation to change and courage and living in these spectacularly challenging times, that this was a quote by Trungpa, the Buddhist teacher. He said, "The bad news is there is no parachute. The good news is there is no ground." Right? The bad news is there is no parachute. The good news is there is no ground. And I also stumbled across this beautiful quote this morning by a Zen teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, who said, "When we live in awareness, it's easy to see miracles everywhere. Each moment you are alive is a gem, shining through and containing earth and sky and clouds. The tears I've shed today have become rain. What is most important is to find peace and share it with others." And this is a lot like this last line of this Dongshan quote, that everyone wants to leave the endless changes, but when you stop bending and fitting your life, you come and sit by the fire. Yeah, so again, how do we stop bending and fitting our lives? I think it takes courage. I think it takes courage to be present, to be here, to open our hearts. You know, so these 7 practices of mindful leadership. The first one, love the work, and I think the last one, keep making it simpler. Keep making it simpler is a lot like the practice of stopping bending and fitting, stopping bending and fitting our lives, and coming and sit by the fire, to be completely here, to be completely present. So with that, let's do a few minutes of practice together. Let's stop, let's sit, let's do a few minutes of mindfulness meditation practice. And I like to find a way to make these practices as accessible as possible, and at the same time, how can we keep their real depth? So starting by noticing what it's like to be here, and what is it like to stop? Can you just stop and completely bring your attention to being right here? Always good, I find, to start with the body, noticing what it's like sitting in your chair, or if you're standing, what is it like standing? What's happening with your shoulders, your back, your stomach? Can you relax the muscles in your face, relax the muscles in your jaw? What is it like to be here right now? What is it like to transition from activity to stopping? Is it possible to actually stop and notice what it's like? Noticing that breathing is happening without you having to do anything. Seeing that it takes some courage to really give yourself over to being here fully. Do you have the courage to find your own peace? Do you have the courage to live with an open hand and open heart? What does it feel like to open your hand and not be caught by your usual judgments, limited thinking, limited belief. Just here. Nothing needed. I think this is the ground of mindful leadership, is being able to disengage and to engage with your own inner world, your own body, your thoughts, your feelings. And let's practice that right now. And this practice of disengaging, this is the practice of what does it feel like in the body to be completely safe, to cultivate the body that can feel that nothing is needed right now, nothing extra is needed, that you are safe, you are fine, you have everything you need right now. And can you feel how connected we all are to each other and to life? Everyone wants to leave the endless changes, but when you stop bending and fitting your life, you come and sit. You come and sit. So just letting go of bending and fitting. And let's just take a few moments to feel our bodies, to feel our breaths, and to see if it's possible to appreciate being here, appreciate being alive right now. Let's just sit quietly for 30 seconds. Yeah, thank you. And coming back, yeah, love the work, do the work. Yeah, so it's not enough to just love the work. We also need to do the work of opening our hearts, the work of finding more clarity in our thinking, in our communication. Don't be an expert, letting go of needing to be any certain way and just finding a way to be your open, vulnerable self. Connect to your pain and connect to the pain of others. This is seeing that impermanence is hard. The pandemic is hard. These racial issues, these are powerfully difficult. Climate change. So connecting to your own pain and the pain of others. Depend on others and keep making it simpler. Keep making it simpler. And this is the practice, I think, of coming back to what, finding the courage to stay connected to yourself, staying connected to others, staying connected to what matters most. And I think with that, I would like to open it up to questions. I wonder if anyone would like to, any reflections, thoughts, questions about mindfulness, mindful leadership, 7 practices of a mindful leader. And I need to open my chat. I see, how do we bring the qualities that we're cultivating in our meditation practice into our daily lives, whether it be a position of leadership or not? And then I see the second question, differences between a leader and a mindful leader. Yeah, so this word leader and leadership can be a little confusing. We're all leaders. We're all leaders, especially now. But I think in general, we are all responsible for our lives, leading our lives, and no matter what our particular role might be in our in our organization, we all have a tremendous influence, whether we're in a leadership role or on a team, or even if we're a one-person business, we work with people. And I think sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that. All business, all work is really the practice of helping others. So I think this question about how can we bring the qualities of cultivating our meditation practice into our lives, I think it's primarily the quality of care and trust. Care and trust. You know, one of the things that I've noticed in the business world and in life in general is that if you're not cultivating care, if you're not cultivating trust, you are cultivating cynicism and mistrust. It reminds me a lot of, I love Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, and I think it's a really important book. And I've been thinking, you know, he makes this strong case that if you are not a anti-racist, if you're not really doing the work of changing, of transforming your own limited thinking and limited beliefs, that you are doing harm. And I think something like this is, in a parallel way, is true about mindfulness and mindful leadership, is that there is no neutral ground. We need to be doing the work of waking up, the work of opening our minds and hearts. And if we're not, it means we are asleep, and it means we are most likely doing harm. Yeah, so I think this is also my response to this question about the key difference between a leader and a mindful leader. A leader is only focused on getting stuff done. A mindful leader is focused on getting the right things done in a caring way. I see a question that says, I mentioned the practice as depending on others. Can you explain more? Yeah, I think this makes me think of two really interesting studies that Google did several years ago. Google wanted to know, what was it that made for great teams? And this was a study called Google Aristotle. And then they also wanted to know, what was it that made for exceptional managers and leaders, a study called Google Oxygen. And I think in some way, one of the findings of both these studies about teams and leadership was about the quality of how we depend on others. One of the findings of Google Aristotle was they came up with this phrase of psychological safety, that what makes for particularly exceptional, well-functioning, effective teams is a sense of psychological safety, which is created by real caring, really real deep listening and care. I mean, in some way, it's just so simple, right? It's easy to just think of it as a throwaway word, caring, but it's not easy. It's not easy to really bring in real care for other people, real care for solving real problems, and to make this our priority, as opposed to getting caught in our own fears, in our own egos, in wanting to look good, into the politics. And it's very easy to get caught by these things. Yeah, so not going back to this Dongshan quote, not being caught by it is or it isn't. Do you have the courage to be at peace with it? Well, thank you very much. I hope that we can all find the courage to face the pains and possibilities of being effective, caring, mindful leaders. Thank you.